In the old days, documentaries were made about history. There was sort of rostrum camera work over paintings, and there was the voice of God authority, and people were interviewed. You have to do dramatic fiction. You have to reconstruct now in these documentaries, don't you? People expect a dramatic reconstruction as if it was actually fiction.
Yeah, and there's a place for that. It's wonderful stuff. I mean, I think that this year's we're going to see a big debate between great drama and bad history, and it could be the same thing at the same time. And we're going to, because of course we've got Blackadder coming up with the First World War, and I was actually taught the First World War through Blackadder. I mean, I think Mr. Gove's got a point there. And however, it is also fantastic comedy and drama. It's iconic. The other thing, of course, we've got the Braveheart referendum coming up, and I mean, it's certainly the case that lots of people, right across anyone who's seen Braveheart, thinks that is an accurate depiction of the past. Again, it's
really?
like
Well, what bit of it was wrong?
Well, you know, I think some of it was a bit, you know, some of it was off. But I think I actually don't think he was Edward III's dad. That's the bit.
Oh, so the princess was born 30 years after her.
That's a slight.
Other than that.
But the point is, it all comes back, like Shakespeare, Henry V, terrible history, one of the best bits of art ever created. I mean, it's the constant, you know, tension.
But if you're going to use now, there's drama and there's drama which also has an element of entertainment. But if you're going to use drama as a teaching tool, does it not have to be accurate?
I mean, I think that's if teachers have cleverly worked out to bring, if Tony Robinson's right, and teachers are bringing this brilliantly balanced sense, and you've got a bit of Blackadder, but then the next day you're looking at a real revisionist idea of actually how Haig invented all-arms warfare and successfully won the war on the Western Front. That's great. I think Tony Robinson's probably wrong about that. I mean, I don't think teachers are doing that. They certainly didn't when I was. I loved watching Blackadder. Our class went mad watching Blackadder. We couldn't believe our luck. It's funny. It was brilliant. It was apparently set in the past. But you know, it is. The World War I, like no other war in our history, is absolutely riddled with these extraordinary myths. And I think part of that has been because of its treatment by going right back to the war poets. Again, some of the great art ever created in the English language, the war poets, but not particularly good history necessarily.
Where are you on this, Michael?
Well, I entirely agree with what Dan has said so far. It is an extraordinary case of the First World War. Our views of the First World War are not dictated by what historians have said, but by what artists have said. As you say, back to the war poets, also back to a film called All Quiet on the Western Front and the novel that preceded that, which I think was 1930. It's been going on for a very long period of time. In fact, it even reached the stage with the First World War where the historians themselves believed what art was telling them. I mean, for example, until very recently, it had been accepted even by historians that the German atrocities of the First World War were a fiction created by British propaganda. It's only very recently that historians have gone back and rediscovered the original data and discovered that the German atrocities in Belgium were real and were very well documented at the time. But subsequently, it had been alleged that they were just the invention of British propaganda, and even historians had come to believe that. So I think the First World War is an extraordinary case where art, rather than scholarship, has dictated our view.
I'm not one of these people that thinks Michael Gove is always wrong. However, I don't know why he's dived into all this, because the definitive, for me, one of the definitive history books about the First World War was written by a Tory. It was written by Alan Clark, yes. Lions Led by Donkeys. And there's no more trenchant criticism of the ruling class and the generals than Alan Clark's book. So Gove perhaps dived into the wrong controversy.
It has begun. There's always been a debate about the First World War. The drama that's been shown, the stuff we've talked about, depict the sort of British being led by bumbling fools and so on, and what were we doing there in the first place? But the body of history is very much that behind the First World War, it was German militarism, that was the fundamental cause. There were many other causes, but German, that it was a war that had to be fought, despite the stupidities and despite that seems to be the view of historians.
Well, I think lots of, I mean, if it's a war that had to be fought, but if you're going to explain to someone who's lost 3 of their kids that Belgian neutrality has to be respected, if I was that mother of those 3 kids, I'd say I don't care about Belgian neutrality. So, yes, there is an element that says, if you want to preserve the balance of power on the European continent, when Germany invaded Belgium, for no good reason, Belgium is a neighbouring country to ours. Germany had the 2nd largest fleet in the world at the time, the biggest and best army in the world at the time. It's not a bad reason to go to war. It's certainly a better reason to go to war than the Napoleonic Wars, the Boer War, arguably the Second World War, invading Poland, invading Belgium. I mean, you know,
I find people are very unimaginative about this. I mean, I think it's unimaginable, but I think if Belgium were invaded today, Britain would go to war. I mean, Britain. Yeah, I don't think Britain could tolerate a neighbouring country being under foreign military control. You can't allow the Channel ports to fall to another country.
There is also the A.J.P. Taylor theory, though, that it was all kind of accidental because of the Serbian railway timetable.
He did. That was A.J.P. Taylor.
I know.
That was the railway timetable theory
exactly,
of the start of the war. Of course, Hollywood in particular has plays fast and loose with the historic facts. You mentioned Braveheart. It's one good example. Or what was that one about the enigma that they got from the submarine?
Oh yeah, they knew something. Yeah, exactly.
So it can be. It must annoy you at times when you.
Of course it does. But so dramatists. That's what dramatists do. Turner, when he painted Hannibal crossing the Alps, that's not what it looked like. But it's the most stunning painting of all time. That's okay. It doesn't matter that.
Yeah, but it's pretty fundamental that it was the British that got the German sub, not the Americans.
Well, sure, but back in the day when
Hannibal did cross the Alps.
It's true.
I don't agree with that. I think, the fact that people's view of Nixon or the fact that people's view of Kennedy is now probably largely determined by movies that have been made by people with agendas, people who wanted to portray Kennedy in a particular way and Nixon in a particular way. One need hardly say Kennedy positively and Nixon negatively. I think that is important because I think it is too easy for people who make art to dominate our perceptions.
But
movies are more influential now, basically because people read fewer books, learn fewer facts, and get more information from the screen.
Totally, but there's nothing you can't censor them. You can't censor directors and scriptwriters. So all you can do is get out there and wage a counterinsurgency on Twitter, do what we can, make our programmes.
Sometimes they can pique an interest as well.
Of course.
I think, for example, this movie coming out on slavery, I think that will encourage a lot of people to start reading more about it and to do the proper history of it as well. It can be a great advantage too. Your film there, it brought back memories because I've whitewater rafted down the Grand Canyon. It was one of the best weeks of my life. And what's the programme about?
We were following the 1869, the first expedition down the Grand Canyon. 4 boats and 10 men went in, and 2 boats and 6 men came out 3 months later. So it was a dangerous thing to do. Back then, we of course had it easy because we knew where we were going.
Amazing. I look forward to that. Dan, thank you.